Hi everyone, this is just a quick video on how to answer question 6 and section A reading on the EDUQAS paper 2 GCSE English language exam. So once you've opened your question paper, it'll say section A reading. So there are 6 questions to answer if you scroll down, and this is the last question, question 6. If you've been working through this with me, you'll have already gone through questions 1 to 5. If you're just joining us here, no problem. Question 6 is the hardest question on the paper for most people for a couple of reasons. One, it's the last question, so we've often not managed our time effectively and we run out of time here, we end up rushing. But second of all, it's the one where you have to compare both the texts. So you're having to use both texts at the same time, and that on its own is a skill that you need to master. You can see that it's worth 10 marks, question 6. So again, we need to be thinking about that idea of making 6 to 8 different points supported by 6 to 8 different quotes. But we do only have 15 minutes really to do it in. So as I've advised you before, just do as much as you can in 15 minutes, but please make sure that you plan that you will have 15 minutes remaining. So it tells us that both of these texts are about the experiences each writer had with different animals. Okay, the question is actually in the bullet points. It says compare the writer's attitudes towards the animals they encounter and how they get their attitudes across to the reader. So I'm just going to highlight that bit because this is what we're actually trying to answer. What are the writer's attitudes towards the animals? How are they the same or how are they different across both texts? Now, you should have read this text a few times by now if you've answered all of the questions, that will come before it. So you should have a really good idea about the writer's attitudes towards these animals already. So straight away, I mean, without even looking at the texts, I know that Catherine Bennett has a really negative attitude towards the dog that she encountered because it attacked her. And I know she's got that negative attitude because there's quite a sarcastic tone to a lot of that article. She uses a lot of exaggeration and hyperbole to sort of get across how big and aggressive that dog was, and sort of plays on that idea of how scared and vulnerable she was in that situation. And then she begins to back it up with other facts and statistics about dog attacks. Whereas in text 1, Charles Darwin has a very pleasant experience with the tortoises, which makes his attitude towards them positive. He's intrigued by them, isn't he? He's fascinated by them. He's very curious. They amuse him. They intrigue him. He wants to know lots of things about them, and he has and we know that because he has a positive experience with them. So we're looking for evidence of their attitudes towards the animals. So in this question, it's a really good idea, I think, to go backwards and forwards. And what I would always do is I would start with text 1. I would say, firstly, in text 1, or if you don't want to do it like that, you can just use the surnames of each writer. In Darwin's text, for example, or it could just be firstly Darwin's attitude is. And I'll start with something like that. So firstly, in Darwin's text, his attitude towards tortoises is, and now I need to have a look, don't I? Well, if I have a look back at the answers that I did for question 2, if you've done question 2, this will be really helpful for you too, because it was how does he show his interest in the tortoises? So we know that he's interested in them. So whatever we wrote for this one, can we use it again for question 6? Yes, we can. Now, if I have a back look at what I wrote, you can't see this. I put that Darwin is intrigued and interested or fascinated by the tortoises. Now, what example can I give specifically? I think the first one we started off with, he could not imagine what kind of animal the tracks he saw belonged to. I'll use this one actually. So this is something that I wrote when I was having a go at that. when I was having a go at this. So he calls them majestic. So in Darwin's text, his attitude towards the tortoises is positive, as he calls them majestic, suggesting he thinks they are creatures of beauty and wonder. Okay, so that is going to be my first response there. But then what I would do, I would use a phrase like, on the other hand, or I could say, conversely, or I could say, however, or I could say, whereas. So I want to use a discourse marker basically that shows a contrast, because I know that what I'm going to say about Catherine Bennett is going to be the opposite of this, isn't it? I've wrote is twice there. Oops. So on the other hand, I'm just going to stick with that one for the moment because it's fine. So on the other hand, in Bennett's text, her attitude towards the dog is negative. And then I would go back to question 4 and have a look here. What was the question? She creates the impression that the dog was dangerous. So how far do you agree? Now, if you did agree that she created the impression that that dog was dangerous, you can use lots of your examples here again in question 6, because that would be her attitude, isn't it? That the dog is dangerous. So let's say, on the other hand, in Bennett's text, her attitude towards the dog is negative, as she believes the dog that attacked her was dangerous. And again, I think I found lots of examples of how that dog was dangerous, or how she portrayed that dog to be dangerous. I think the first thing we said, that she was intimidated by the size of the dog. The quote we used was the small pony or the wild pig. But I'm going to use something else that I wrote earlier. So I'm just going to copy this one. Okay. So I'll put a because. Come on, Michelle. Okay. Let's make this red too. This is our answer, text color. Okay. On the other hand, in Bennett's text, her attitude towards the dog is negative, as she believes the dog that attacked her was dangerous. So that's her attitude. Yeah, it was dangerous, because she uses predatory or attacking verbs like charging, circling, lunging, and rearing to describe the dog's actions. Now, what I've done there is I've not just covered her attitude towards the animal, I've also covered how she gets that attitude across. So the attitude is that the dog is dangerous. How does she get that attitude across? Through the use of predatory or attacking verbs. So those negative verbs to describe that dog. So this is, I've turned this into a bit of a language analysis. So actually that point could maybe get me 2 marks, because I'm talking about the how as well as the attitude. I would then maybe go back now to Darwin again. The reason that I'm going to go Darwin, Bennett, Darwin, Bennett, Darwin, Bennett is because if I do run out of time, at least, so say if I ran out of time here, at least I would be able to get maybe 3 marks here, because I've talked about each text. If you'd only made 2 points about text 1, you could probably only get 2 marks there. Or maybe even 1 mark. So if you only talk about one text, your marks are limited to band 1. So you must talk about both texts. So it's better to alternate them. So if you run out of time, at least you've talked about them both. But all you need to do is just keep going. So thirdly, in Darwin's text, his attitude is that the tortoises are incredible, or they're huge, and he uses facts and statistics to show us this. I think he talks about it amuses them. It was a curious spectacle when they went to the spring to drink or something. So look at the words that he's using, because that will help you with the how bit. And then go back to Catherine Bennett's text. What else does she think about that dog? Once you've done that, that's 4 marks already, isn't it? For 4 different points, and you've got both different texts. And remember, it's a 10-mark question, so our goal again is 6 to 8 different points supported by quotes. Just please make sure that you support everything you say with a quote, otherwise you can't get a mark for it. So top tips then, I would say, for question 6, make sure that you are looking at the bullet points. Yeah, because the bullet point there is what it's asking you to compare. They're not asking you to compare the experiences. They're actually asking you to compare the attitudes, okay? And an attitude is different. The experience will show you what their attitude is. Usually, if it's a positive experience, it will be a positive attitude. If it's a negative experience, it'll probably be a negative attitude. And remember, you can use things that you've used already, possibly in question 2 and question 4, if they help you answer the question. But please make sure you use a quote for every single point that you make. So set your phone timer, 15 minutes, question 6. This is the last question on section A, and have a go at the rest of that answer.